about y'all, but at this point, I'm ready to just kind of walk out of here and go find a bank branch to kind of run into and raise a ruckus. Anybody want to do that right now? Let's just pretend like we are, and we'll do a little chant. How about fix our loans, save our homes? Fix our loans, save our homes. Fix our loans, save our homes. All right. I don't like to speak, I like to yell. My name's Ben, I work at CPC, I'm the organizing director, and so about 7 years ago, I graduated college, I didn't know anything about anything, and I went to work for this community organization, said go knock on doors and talk to people and you'll learn anything you need to know, and they were right. What I was hearing 7 years ago though, were the first wave of the subprime loans that were starting to fail. Subprime loans that got marketed in low and moderate income, working class, communities of color. I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at the time. And, you know, lying to people outright, you got a fixed rate, don't worry about it, might go up a little bit in a year or two, no big deal. They were adjustable rate mortgages where people's payments were doubling, tripling in a year, and getting out of people's range. People were going into foreclosure, and it didn't matter, right? They had a nice little ratio built into their profit margins where it said, we'll just foreclose on you, slap a new coat of paint on the walls, and turn around and sell it to somebody else, put them in a crappy loan, fails 2 years later. You could watch the same address come up like clockwork every 2 years on the foreclosure list. This was happening like in the late 90s, early 2000s. The first wave of predatory loans that really started to hit our neighborhoods everywhere, mostly in urban core neighborhoods around the country. 7 years later, there's a room full of people whose loans are failing because they're crappy, they were designed to fail, and banks are turning, a deaf ear to everything that people are going through. So in that, it never ceases to amaze me that in that time, they decided to make more of those loans, sell them to more people, gamble on that investment, fail, crash our economy, put a bunch of us out of work, and then foreclose on those people.
And then
consequence-free. Oh, and they got a few $1 billion of our taxpayer money because they got into a little bit of trouble. I don't know about y'all, but that's just like unacceptable. And so you talk to people though, and you say, we're going to take on the banks, we're going to take on Wall Street, we're going to do something. People kind of roll their eyes and say, I'm with you. Really? What are we going to do? And all you have to do is listen to everyone that talked tonight, because every single one of those people, and I'm sure a lot of you, are fighting those banks, and some people are winning. A lot of us are losing, but some people are winning. We're fighting them up by ourselves every single day. Miss Sharon already has a full-time job. In addition to the one she's paid, it's calling Chase, right? 5 times a week you're on the phone.
Oh yeah, that's just when they call me.
Yeah,
I have to call them too.
Exactly, and it's just, people go through that fight on their own, and we can't stop doing that. We can't stop having our individual fights. But one thing a housing counselor told me when I first started doing this work was, you have to try everything. You have to use every tool at your disposal. You've got to get a housing counselor, get a lawyer, talk to other people that are going through it, join a community group, go marching into banks, do direct action, bring news crews with you. That's the only chance you have to save your home. You pick one of those, you're going to lose. You try everything and anything, you increase your chances of winning. And so when I think about what we need to do to fix this crisis once and for all and send the message to banks, we're not ever going to let this happen again, we have to take that same spirit into our collective fight. So while we're all fighting every day ourselves, it's tough, but we've got to set aside a few minutes for us all to get together and take a look above that and figure out what we can do collectively to take these guys on. And so I want to talk just a little bit tonight about what we're going to do in the next few weeks, and then more importantly, what we can do long-term to really try everything that we can together. Ms. Cassandra, some others have mentioned, there's legislation, there's getting in front of our elected officials, there's, quite frankly, just changing the public dialogue about this issue, right? Does anyone know who Jamie Dillon is? Who's Jamie Dillon, Miss Nancy?
He's one of the people that's trying to convince everybody that they couldn't possibly have known.
That's right. And in addition to that, it's funny, there's a lovely quote today at this economic conference in Switzerland that the real problem is that we need to stop bashing banks. Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me, man? This guy is so tone deaf. You know, stop bashing banks. Homeowners are the problem. We're irresponsible. We took out loans we couldn't afford. Like, is there really not a common denominator 8 years later into this problem that it isn't homeowners, but it's banks? Jamie Dillon's got it wrong, and so we're going to start bringing a message of justice to people like Jamie Dillon until they wake up and understand we're on the side of right, they're on the side of wrong, and things are going to change. So that being said, these banks are not unbeatable. And I look around this room and I look at an organization like CPC, and I just have to think back a few years. Insurance companies, kind of big, right? A lot of money, real powerful, a lot of government in their pockets, a lot of Congress people. We passed a healthcare law that insured 32 million people that weren't insured in this country before that happened. Lives were saved. We took on like one of the most well-moneyed interests in the country. Payday lenders, no slouches themselves. They pull millions of dollars out of our neighborhoods every year. We took them on last year. We've been taking them on for 4 years. But last year finally passed the bill that caps the interest rates that they can charge at a real reasonable 45%. Down from 521, so we thought that was a pretty good win. And so, you know, it's doable. We can do it. But we're going to have to wage war and fight in the court of public opinion, right? We'll be in the courts. We're going to be at the Capitol. We're going to be in bank lobbies. We're going to be on CEOs' lawns. We're going to be absolutely everywhere we need to be until we get what we need. And we're going to do just like what everyone else does who's fighting individually, and that's everything and anything in their power. Learning, like, people walk into a room and people are learning something new. It's one of the things I've heard is if we have an organized group of people where that's happening, people are just learning from each other too, right? People are finding new avenues, new loopholes, new tactics for the individual fights. We're going to be building a leadership group of folks, so we're going to encourage everybody to join to actually think through the same way to fight this campaign collectively. So the group that has been meeting at Ms. Sharon's house over the last month, here's the opportunity that we're faced with right now in February. So I think Ms. Lamone talked about this earlier. There's a 50-state investigation that all attorney generals in the country are participating right now. And this came about largely because of the robo-signing scandal. People hear about this in the news, right? Like, the people that are supposed to review all your documents, income, debt, liability, oh, we should foreclose, and that gets signed and notarized. There were really people in windowless rooms, you know, just paid signers, just signing these documents, notary stamping it, signed. So when that story broke, right, attorney generals kind of said, well, that doesn't just sound like an isolated case. That looks like an industry that breaks the law through its very existence in the way it does business. So we're glad they saw that the way that we did. There's Attorney General Tom Miller is from Iowa. He's leading the investigation. He has a executive committee of attorney generals of another 12. John Suthers, who's our Attorney General, is on that executive committee. So things are moving quickly. People like Jamie Dillon and the Bank of America CEO and Wells Fargo and Citigroup, they're all meeting with him, with Attorney General Miller, weekly, saying, it's okay, we'll fix it, don't worry about it. We don't think that we're going to get anything out of a settlement with banks that when Jamie Dillon's the only person in the room. So there's a big national coalition of homeowners that's organizing right now in about 20 states, most of them where the executive committee attorney generals are, so that we can get homeowners, like everyone in this room, sat down with our attorney general to say, here's what's going on, and here's what we need out of a strong settlement. So they're going to sue the 6 biggest banks more than likely. What's happened in the past is that they end up settling for some amount of money. Does anyone know why that hasn't been effective so far? They're banks, right? They're made out of money. Here's what we're talking about in terms of a settlement. And we need to be mindful that John Suthers is the people's attorney. And we're the people, and we're a party of interest in this lawsuit. And so we are going to be demanding and getting meetings with Attorney General Suthers in the next few weeks and around the country as homeowners to say, here's what we need. Number one, we need mandatory loan modifications that don't race the clock on the foreclosure process. So right now, you call Chase and they say, all right, let's talk. Let's have you start sending in paperwork 20 times. In the meantime, though, they've flipped the switch on the foreclosure process, and Stephanie O'Malley, God love her, there's not a lot her office can do to stop a foreclosure because it's just the clock ticks and they have to file another piece of paperwork. And so while you're going back and forth and getting jerked around by the servicer, by the lender, well, foreclosure is just on its way to the end, to the sales date. And there's not a lot people can do to stop that. What we're saying is, if there's any hope for a modification, you stop the clock. You can't start a foreclosure. You exhaust all your options. If there's nothing left, then go ahead and foreclose. So mandatory modifications, real and meaningful. And that means there is no such thing as a meaningful modification that does not use principal balance reduction as the first line tool. There were a lot of hands in here, people who owe more than their home is worth. Can I see those again? So, how many of you, if I just restructure your payments but don't change your balance, who's going to win in the end? Who's going to get to own their home or sell it? Nobody, right? Principal reduction is really the threshold for any settlement that comes out of the. It's only good if it includes mandatory principal reduction. We hit reset for the banks when they screwed up. We didn't even do anything wrong, and the way to hit reset on the housing market, principal reductions across the board to market value of the home, right? Banks are going to take a hit, let them. They deserve it, they need to, they have the money, they can absorb it. If we all got current, it makes us believe that if we play by the rules, we'll get ahead. We bought a home to own it, to pass it on. None of us are going to be able to do that if we owe more than it's worth. They crashed the economy, they've crashed people's property values, they need to take the hit on principal reductions.
Yep.
Sound good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Principal reductions across the board. Reset the housing market, people go back to work. Landscapers, construction workers, builders, real estate agents, lawyers, everybody, right? It'll help actually create jobs too. We think that's the key to restarting the economy. Number 3, people like Miss Cassandra who have been foreclosed on. There are people that have lost their homes. Luckily, Miss Cassandra's still in hers. We need restitution for people who have had their homes stolen. If Lisa and her husband hadn't gotten on top of things and figured out how to stop that, stolen house, right? Something makes you think you're going to want the $300,000 back, right, if they took it from you? There's a lot of people out there that's already happened to. This has been going on for almost a decade now. They need to pay into it. So that dollar amount, yeah, we have an idea for that. You put it into a restitution fund. That's what people you already ripped off. Fourthly and finally, civil and criminal penalties for people who broke the law.
Yes.
Right.
Yes?
Yes.
Now, Attorney General Suthers, to his credit, has been doing a great job of going after bad actors in our communities, finding people instead of finding the foreclosure scam people. We just want to make sure that he's with us and showing bold leadership and directing his gaze upward into the eyes of people like Jamie Dillon. Because when that guy breaks the law, millions of people lose their home, and they did. We know they did. And so there's no way we stop this from happening again if we don't put people in jail and find the people that created this mess, right? We're gonna be back in this room. I was in this room somewhere else 7 years ago. We'll all be back here in 7 more years if we don't have that last piece. If we don't put people in jail like CEOs of banks. So, do those sound like reasonable, good demands that will address a lot of what we need? Yeah? We think so too. So we believe that these could be the tenets of a good settlement. We met with Attorney General Miller in Iowa in December, about 100 homeowners from 12 different states, and he committed to that group of homeowners, yes, I believe all those things should be in a good settlement. Everyone's waiting for the and. And just this past week, Attorney General Miller met with some same homeowners in Iowa and has now started to backtrack a little bit on his saber-rattling and tough-on-bank stance. So what we need to do here in Colorado in the next few weeks is get a meeting with our Attorney General. We've got to start holding their feet to the fire. They have to know that we as homeowners are a party of interest in this lawsuit, and here's what we want out of it. We don't want you to settle for anything less than mandatory modifications, mandatory principal reduction, restitution, civil and criminal penalties. Right?
Right.
It's a done, sounds like a done deal, right? We just got to get him in the room and have him say, yes, I'm with you. So Ms. Lamone, I think, is going to talk about next steps, and making that happen. But that's the plan in the short while. We've really got to elevate this fight. We've really got to be saying what we need to everyone who will listen. Elected officials, to the media, to the Attorney General. There's a lot of opportunities. You know, we think we could win these things, but we also know that we could lose, right? And we could not win this in a settlement. So we're not putting our eggs in this basket, or all of them necessarily, but we can pass legislation. We can use the Consumer Financial Protection Agency, which is going to be coming up online here in July. We've got regulators that we could be getting cases to. We can be fighting in the court of public opinion. We can be charging into banks every other week with individual homeowners. You can't get through on the phone? That's okay. We'll show up with 100 people in the press.
Right.
You want to talk then? We'll talk. That's the kind of stuff we're going to be doing, and really the reason that we're hoping that the people in this room tonight are folks that want to help us do that. And we're a membership community organization, so everyone that spoke here tonight is a member, with the exception of staff, is on an organizing committee of members who are going to be making decisions about the direction of this campaign and what we do and how we do it, and sharing our experiences and what we're learning and how to be effective individually and collectively. And so we'd love to have everyone in this room, in the meeting with the Attorney General, on the leadership team, building this movement out of this room, into the streets, and around this country, and so we get what we need. And I think we can do it.